Welcome to another broadcast of Enviro Talk. I'm your co-host Salar Ahmed.
And I'm your co-host, Tammy Serrano.
On today's episode, we'll be talking about air pollution as well as an interesting form of air pollution that happens all across the US called an inversion. According to the Natural Resources Defense Council, or NRDC, air pollution refers to the release of pollutants into the air that are detrimental to human health and the planet as a whole. The main causes of air pollution, according to the NRDC, include smog and soot, hazardous air pollutants, greenhouse gases, and pollen and mold. Smog and soot are the most common types of air pollution. Smog is also called ground level ozone, and it happens when emissions from burning fossil fuels interact with sunlight. Soot, or particulate matter, on the other hand, consists of minuscule pieces of chemicals, soil, smoke, dust, or allergens in the structure of gas or solids that are transported in the air. Next, we are going to talk about some forms of air pollution that happen within the US. Like I said before, in today's episode or broadcast, we'll be talking about a unique form of air pollution called an inversion. Inversions happen all across the US, and today we're going to be talking about 3 different locations where inversions happen in our country. So the first one is the Salt Lake Valley in Utah, the second one is the Central Valley in California, and finally we have an inversion that happens in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Next, I'll have our co-host Sammy Serrano mention some health effects of air pollution, as well as some questions for today's audience to think about. Take it away, Sammy.
Thank you, Salar. So air quality does affect our health after all. Not only can it cause short-term issues such as irritation to the eyes, nose, and throat, but it can also cause shortness of breath and aggravate the lungs and those of asthma. If someone is exposed to prolonged air pollution, it can cause a lot of more chronic respiratory conditions such as bronchitis, pneumonia, and can worsen asthma. And throughout this presentation, we want our audience to consider these questions for themselves. The first question is, have you ever experienced a noticeable difference in air quality, whether it is spending more time in a polluted area or even somewhere with more fresh air quality? Do you think that man-made pollution can be enhanced by natural geographic layouts? Or do you know the long-term health effects of prolonged air pollution? And what can you do to help reduce air pollution on a personal or industrial level? So now on to Salar, who will discuss air pollution in a location we should all be familiar with, Salt Lake Valley in Utah.
All right, everyone. So now I'm going to discuss the Salt Lake Valley inversion. But before we get into that, you may be wondering, what the heck is an inversion? So, according to the Utah Department of Environmental Quality, an inversion happens when cold air at the surface gets trapped underneath warm air on top of it. Under normal circumstances, warmer air is located closer to the ground, and colder air is seen at higher altitudes. Utah's inversions are especially common after snowstorms. So one example of an inversion can be seen in the Salt Lake Valley in northern Utah. According to an article written for KSL.com, the Salt Lake Valley is formed because of the Ochre Mountain Range to the west and the Wasatch Mountain Range to the east. The 2 mountain ranges come together to form a bowl shape around the valley, which is key to how the inversion actually comes about. And this is a quote from that KSL article. Quote, essentially natural weather conditions create a layer of warmer air that collects at the top of the bowl. This layer of air then acts as a lid, trapping cooler air below. And just as the cold air can't escape, neither can the pollution, end quote. Now let's talk about some data regarding Utah's inversion. Okay, so according to the Utah Department of Environmental Quality, a typical Utah winter sees about 5 to 6 multi-day inversion episodes, and on average 18 days with high P2.5 levels exceeding the National Ambient Air Quality Standard, or NAAQS. A strong storm or low pressure system is often needed to clear out the inversion, end quote. The main point I want you guys to get across from this is that, inversion, they're a naturally occurring event, they're bound to happen, but they're gonna be worse if the air quality is bad. So it's up to us as Utahns to do our part to clean the air so that we don't have, more yucky inversions. I'm going to talk about the health effects of bad air quality. Okay, so according to a recently published Salt Lake Tribune article, Utahns' median life expectancy decreases anywhere from 1.1 to 3.6 years because of air pollution in the state. Anywhere between 2,500 to 8,000 premature deaths each year can be attributed to air pollution in the state, according to the same article. Okay, and finally, and again, just to comment on those statistics, those are very sobering. 3.6 years may not seem like a long time, but that is a number of years off a person's life. So we do need to do more as Utahns to work on cleaning up our air, not just here, but in other parts of the country, as Sammy is going to talk about. So lastly, I will just mention some policy recommendations for Utah's air quality. Now, you may be asking what we should be doing as Utahns about this bad air quality. So first of all, I think availability of public transit in the state needs to be improved. According to a Deseret News poll, many people don't take public transit because of inconvenient locations. We have to first and foremost prioritize public transit as a transportation option if we want to improve the state's air. Secondly, Utah's Division of Air Quality needs to receive more funding and jurisdiction to be able to pursue its mission of cleaning up Utah's air. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn over the time to our wonderful co-anchor, Sammy Serrano.
Thanks, Salar. First things first, let it be known that inversions are not exclusive to the state of Utah. In fact, California's Central Valley experiences their own inversion as a result of the agricultural industry, which provides nearly half of the nation's produce. With this, it's no wonder how much pollutants are released into the atmosphere, especially given the fact that farmers usually burn their excess brush and cuttings at the end of each season. And like Utah, the Central Valley's bowl-shaped mountain range traps smog particles from escaping, even if the wind attempts to carry them away from the area. That being said, the West Coast is not the only region of the United States that suffers from this type of geographically enhanced pollution. Over on the East Coast, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania experienced possibly their most severe inversion in December of 2019. For 6 days, the severity of the poor air quality surpassed the federal particulate matter standard, and for 8 days, hydrogen sulfide emissions exceeded the state's regulatory limit. With this, the Greater Birmingham Alliance to Stop Pollution, aka GASP, was prompted to enact additional policies that would limit emissions from factories and industries that contribute to the poor air quality in the state. These industries, particularly the coal-producing U.S. Steel Clairton Coke Works, received criticisms from GASP for their insufficiency to respond appropriately and immediately to the amount of pollution they released into the atmosphere. In the words of the executive director of GASP, Rachel Filippi, weather is not as much of an issue here as pollution is. GASP's mission continues to involve guaranteeing that industries endorse regulatory policies that limit their air pollution emissions. I hope that our viewers are encouraged to not only limit their own pollution emissions in the ways that Solar suggested, such as taking public transport, but also reach out to the industries that are responsible for producing the majority of the world's pollution. And lastly, here are our references. Thanks for tuning in.